Here's a little picture I drew, brothers and sisters, of Chopper after he's taken his daily dose of steroids, aka the human fruit. And this is just kind of when he bulks up over there. So if you like this and more, remember to follow me on all the social networks. One Piece, Chapter 162, Adventure in the Kingdom of Sand.
Evil herons and Sandora dragons. Oh my goodness. Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the epic and sometimes hot and sandy tale, at least currently in this Alabasta arc, another review of One Piece. And our last chapter saw us, of course, seeing the Straw Hats trekking through the desert northwest from Eremalu, whatever that city was, the green city, the Emerald City, and tracking northwest to Yuba in the hopes that they can find the rebel leader and that they can somehow quell this uprising, this rebellion. So that's where we left off, of course, with them being in the middle of the desert, and that's where we pick up. And this whole chapter is really just kind of a you wonder sometimes, like, I have a love-hate relationship going with Luffy. I love just his singular-minded thinking of, I have this goal and I'm going to get to it no matter what. But on the other hand, I hate how dim-witted he can be and just how easily fooled, and just very... the stuff that he gets into and then has to rely on his crewmates to get him out is just ridiculous. So we wind up seeing at the beginning of the chapter, they're trekking through the desert, and Luffy's just like, and they're like, Luffy, stop panting so hard. He's just like, I can't. I'm so tired. I don't have any sweat left. And he's asking for water. So he winds up, they say, okay, well, just take a sip. And you see his giant cheeks fill up, and he's glum, 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 glum. Usopp nails him in the back of the head, forcing him to spit it out. And he says, just a sip, and then everybody else is arguing over sips of water. And Chopper is, of course, he has fur, so he's burning up as well. And then Luffy says, just take off your fur. And he's like, I'm a reindeer, you idiot. So just some of the dim-witted things you see by Luffy. And then we see Luffy, he's going and he's begging Sanji for, he's like, oh, let's eat those pirate box lunches you made. And Sanji's like, not until Vivi says, Vivi, knows the country, knows the terrain, knows how long they're going to be out, and, and has obviously been put in charge of spacing things out so that they don't run out of supplies, food and water and such. So, then, Luffy says, oh, come on, Vivi, we need to eat. I'm so hungry, And she's like, no, we're only we can't stop now. We're only a quarter of the way there. And he's like, come on, didn't you ever hear of the old saying that, when you're hungry, you got to eat? She's like, you just made that up, man, And he just makes things up to suit his purpose. But overall, just very, very funny, the exchanges. And then Vivi's like, listen, the next crags that we get to, which, we assume are like, craggy rocks and things like that they can maybe, get some rest and some shade from, we will, we'll have our lunches. So Luffy's like, okay, whatever. Usopp asks a little bit about, with the dunes, all the sand dunes and everything else. And she says, he goes, it wouldn't be so bad, but it's with up and down with all the dunes, And she says some of the sand dunes are, as much as 1,000 feet high. And Usopp's like, 1,000 feet? That's a damn mountain, And they're absolutely right. I can imagine having to trek up and down through this desert, in 120 degree, 130 degree heat, whatever it may be. But so anyway, so then we go and we see the next panel. We presume that it's a little bit later on, and Luffy is, still tired, and he's dragging the supply cart through the sand with them, and that has all their supplies, their food and water, their clothes, what have you. And he's complaining about it, and they're like, hey, whatever, man, you lost the coin toss. So there he's walking, and then all of a sudden Vivi's like, she goes, oh, the crags, or somebody cites, no, it's Usopp. Usopp cites it, because he's got the goggles, the binoculars, and he's just like, oh, crags, and Luffy's like, what? And he just takes off like a bat out of hell, with the wag, with the supplies, and he's running. They're like, wow, that got him moving. So Luffy gets to the crags, and as I thought, it's kind of, the different, like, rock formations jutting out of the ground and such, so you can get some shade over there, and Luffy's in the shade, and he's, oh, this is so great, I'm cooling down. And then he goes and he sees on the ground close to him, he sees a bunch of dead birds, you know. And he's like, oh, man. So then he goes and he starts running back without the supplies. And he goes running back and he's like, Chopper, there's a bunch of dead birds. You know, you need to talk to him. You need to help me. We need to figure out what's going on, because he's obviously a doctor and he's an animal. So he could talk to them, you know, find out if they're just sick, if they're what. And Vivi's like, no, Luffy, they're fakers. I'm like, what the hell? We go and we see the birds then going and taking off, and they've all grabbed, you know, different things, you know, from their different things from the supply cart, the bags and packages and such. And they're like, what? So Vivi's like, yeah, I should have warned you, you know, about those. They're sand pirates, right? They're evil herons, they're called. And they, you know, they'll fake and, you know, or ambush you or whatever, but they're fakers, you know, they're bullshitters, and they steal your supplies and leave you in the middle of the desert with nothing, right? So then Sanji gets into it with Luffy, and he's just like, you idiot, that was 3 days worth of supplies and food, all of our personal belongings were in there, what in the hell? And Luffy's like, wasn't my fault, they tricked me. And he's like, you got tricked by birds, you idiot, how stupid can you be? And this is the part where I have that love-hate relationship, because I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, seriously, dude, you're going to be king of the pirates. How stupid can you be? You can't let birds get the drop on you, you know, or get the best of you. So they argue amongst themselves for a bit, and then it's like, you know, and then Zoro's the one who calms everything down. He's like, listen, there's no point in arguing, wasting our energy. We'll sit here and rest for 10 minutes. There'll be water in Yuba, and we'll just have to make it there, you know, and that's what we're going to do, right? So they're going to sit down and rest, and Luffy looks over and sees, I don't know, maybe 100 yards away or something like that. He sees one of the birds drinking water from one of their jugs, you know, one of their little kegs of water out of a straw. And Luffy just flips out, you know, and I can picture this, like, I mean, I haven't seen this part yet in the anime, obviously. I'm way behind in that, but I can just picture the bird being like, looking over at him like, screw you, man, I got all your shit. So Luffy goes and just blindly starts chasing him out into the middle of the desert. And they're like, Luffy, don't, you're going to get lost. And I mean, remember, you're in this giant desert with nothing but a bunch of up and down hills. So, you know, you get a few hundred yards out, sand's blowing, you're done, man. You know, and especially Luffy, he's directionally, Che doesn't know where the hell he's going half the time. And that's why he has to rely on his crewmates and a navigator to get him to the places. But really, it's kind of funny because he takes off, and then no sooner does he take off than, you know, a couple minutes later, he comes running back, and they're like, what in the hell is that? What? That's Luffy, and it looks like there's something chasing him. What is that, you know? And they're like, is there a camel next to him? So then you go and you see this panel, and there's this giant thing. They call it a Sandora dragon, and ultimately it looks kind of like a Komodo dragon, you know, just some large type of lizard. But I mean, this thing is huge, right? You know, it's 50, 80 feet long. I don't know. I mean, giant, you know. And he's chasing after Luffy, and sure as shit, there's a camel, you know, riding beside him, running beside him. So Luffy gets close, you know, gets close up to them and everything like that, right? And then Luffy just goes and turns around, and him, Sanji, and Zoro, the ones that I've been heard in the comments referred to as the power trio, you know, and these are the ones that are basically like the superhuman strength with the special moves, you know, with the kicks and the three sword technique or style, and then of course Luffy with his devil fruit powers, and they all go and kind of gear up to do their special moves, you know, the gum gum and the dragon and the, you know, and then some French word for Sanji that has to do with cooking. And then they just nail him, man. Just, you know, it's a double page spread, right? This thing gets nailed and not even knocked out. They just killed it. They just flat out killed it, you know? Because then in the next page or whatever, you know, Usopp's like, you know, or maybe it was Vivi, I don't know. One of them was like, you know, hey, you know, couldn't they just knock it out? I think it was Usopp, you know? And he's like, with those three? No, that thing never stood a chance. So then they're standing over it, and Luffy's like, hey, can we eat this dragon meat? And, you know, and Sanji's like, I think so. And they find some hot rocks that they can actually, you know, that can actually, the sun obviously has made them so hot that they can, more porous rocks, they get hotter, they hold more heat, and they can actually use them like a grill to cook the meat, because, of course, they have no food or water now because of Luffy and his genius plan. So anyway, so they go and they presume they do that. They have a bite to eat, and then we go and we see them going, and Luffy's like, the camel, this is great, you know? And Sanji's going to go to get on the camel, right? And the camel, like, won't let him get on, kind of moves out of the way, and he falls off. And Chopper's like, because Chopper can, of course, communicate, and Chopper's like, hey, listen, you know, he says he's very grateful for you saving him, and because they see that there's a saddle on him, so obviously this is not just a wild camel, you know, it's eventually, or just at some point, you know, belonged to somebody. So that's why they're thinking about getting some rides, making it easier across the desert. And so Chopper goes, he says he's grateful, this and that, you know, and he'll give rides, but only to women. And it's hilarious because all the guys are like, what? It's stupid, you know. So then Vivi comes up, and Nami, of course, you know, and Vivi's like, oh, you're such a good boy. Well, I think I'll call you or no, she goes, oh, what's your name? And then you go and you get Luffy, Sanji, and I think Usopp or Chopper. They're all lined up, and they're like, idiot, moron, stupid, because they're mad that they can't get a ride. And she's like, I think I'll call you eyelashes, you know. So she gets on, and then she's like, come on, Nami, get on. And Nami's like, no, I'm fine. She's like, no, come on, get on. So her and Nami, the gal pals, get on, you know. So they're walking, and then they go and kind of take off ahead a little bit, and they're like, come on, boys, keep up. So we see all the guys kind of pissed off, and they're trailing behind. And then all of a sudden, Luffy's like, tidal wave. And I just picture him like, if anybody's ever seen the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Johnny Depp, it's a really comical movie, very, very funny. And because it's about this guy, it's a true story, but it's about this guy, and he's on all these different hallucinogenic type drugs that basically just make him go batty. So we find out that Luffy actually ate some kind of, when they were eating the dragon meat, Usopp tried to stop him, but Luffy was eating some kind of weird cactus meat or something like that. And I guess that cactus is deadly, not deadly, but it makes you hallucinate, you know? So Luffy's like, that's it, I'm going to kill you all, or I'm going to take you all out. And he's just like, so he goes to do his gum power, and he's like, you know, gum. And as he's about to do it, you see Chopper next to him, and he just like hits him with a needle, and he's like, sedative. Luffy goes, poof, and just falls flat in the sand, you know? So now they're dragging him behind them, you know, and now they've got this extra thing to actually carry because they got to drag Luffy behind him, and he's knocked out, but at least he's not going crazy bonkers having these flashbacks or whatever, these psychedelic trips or whatever you want to call them. So the chapter ends up shortly after that. We wind up getting a, you know, they kind of come over and they crest a hill, Vivi and Nami on the camel, you know, and they're like, oh, is that Yuba? And they're like, no. And of course, it's nightfall by now, you know, some time has passed. We presume that they're getting closer. And then we go and we see again, you know, Nami and Vivi kind of crest a hill, you know, or a dune with the camel, and they're like, oh, is that Yuba, you know? And they can see some light, but they can't really tell because there's a lot of sand and everything else. And then we kind of get at the end of the chapter, we get like an oh no, or like an oh, you know, so it's obviously not Yuba, or it's something else. I'm not really sure, but it kind of leaves us on a cliffhanger as to, you know, as to what is going to be in the next chapter. So I am certainly looking forward to that. Now, my chapter question is going to be, because I described what my current thoughts and relationship is to Luffy. Of course, most of you are 600 chapters further on or whatever, yeah, and caught up with him, so maybe you've seen many other things that he's done. I don't know if he gets better, don't really care. But my chapter question is, you know, what are your thoughts on Luffy at this point? Is it kind of a, you know what I mean? Is it, do you think that he's great, or do you think that he's just sometimes the dumbest piece of shit ever to walk the earth, you know? So that's my question. Leave your comments and your answer to that in the box down below there. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button, if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching you in the next one, nation.
Thank you as always, brothers and sisters, for liking, sharing, subscribing, watching the videos, and of course spreading the word of the nation. This is a little throwback picture of the Straw Hat. East Blue!